but first let's get started with the biggest news stories around the world with Kosha Gada. Kosha, let's start with this huge development in Argentina, which has just elected a president that is conservative, is a libertarian, he is vehemently anti-Marxist, anti-woke. Javier Milei has been called far-right, he's been called an extremist, and his rise to power has triggered all the usual lefties who've, well, they haven't been this disturbed since Giorgia Meloni was elected as Italy's leader. I'll bring you some of that meltdown later, but first let's hear from the president-elect.
Estamos viviendo la locura de la corrección política estúpida, donde básicamente, no, si ustedes no recitan el socialismo cool, si ustedes no son woke, entonces son violentos, son un peligro para la democracia. Vamos, muchachos.
Seguro.
Sigamos con estas estupideces y en lugar de ser 140, vamos a hacer la villa miseria más grande del mundo.
Kosha, Argentina has elected Javier Milei after the left has just wreaked havoc in that country. It's once prosperous, now the economy is in ruins, inflation running at between 120 and 150% annually. This election has surprised many, but when you look at what's happening in Argentina, you can see why they want a dramatic change.
100%. I think Argentina is one of the biggest cautionary tales of our time of how rapidly that decline happened from prosperity to those numbers that you cite right now. He's an unconventional candidate in many ways. He's got the hair, he's a TV host, he says kind of things that are beyond, you know, what
he likes dress-ups.
He does like dress-ups.
Extraordinary footage of him.
He's a bit eccentric, but the thing is, conventional candidates, look where it's gotten them.
Yeah.
And that's what 150% inflation looks like. They've got a little bit of an immigration problem. They've got the culture wars as well, and people just want something different. So here you are, and it was decisive. It was 55-44. It was a decisive blowout.
Absolutely. Now, his interviews are going viral across the web, particularly X. Let's have a look at one of these clips where he shares his thoughts on the left.
Al zurdo de mierda no le podés dar ni un milímetro.
Pero ¿me podés definir zurdo de mierda? Que no
todos los que, digamos, los colectivistas, los que ponen, digamos, o sea, esa idea... A ver,
¿Por qué le pones de mierda, digamos?
Porque son una mierda. O sea, no, pero es que si pensás distinto te van a aniquilar. Ese es el punto. Es decir, vos al zurdo no le podés dar un milímetro, porque le das un milímetro y lo toma para destrozarte. Es decir, digamos, o sea, vos no podés negociar con el zurdo. No se negocia. No se negocia con esa mierda, no se negocia porque te van a llevar.
Kosha, he said in that interview, if you give the left an inch, they will use it to destroy. You can't negotiate with leftards. That's a direct quote. He also said, since they can't beat us with real arguments, they use the repressive apparatus of the state to destroy us. We've said the country is an almighty mess. He's been dubbed the Argentinian Trump. Can he turn the ship around? People are predicting chaos, economic collapse, all the things we heard when Trump was elected in 2016. Care to make a prediction?
He definitely has his work cut out for him. And I think when things have gone so far off the deep end, it's going to take drastic measures. And let's see, you know, what he does. I think it's going to be a real test. Will he be allowed to govern, or will the civil service and other people kind of obstruct what his agenda is? But he is putting the kinds of dramatic things out there, at least rhetorically, such as shutting down entire ministries, shutting down entire departments of government. And that is the kind of thing it's going to take to turn the ship around. But we'll see if he has the steely spine that it's going to require.
Well, you mentioned the bureaucracy there and if they're going to frustrate him like they did Trump. Let's have a look at what he plans for that fat bureaucracy in Argentina. This video is instructive.
Afuera. Ministerio de Cultura. Afuera. Ministerio de Ambiente y Desarrollo Sostenible. Afuera. Ministerio de las Mujeres y Género y Diversidad. Afuera.
He wasn't done there. There were a few other departments that were spiked also. Predictably, the post-election meltdown has been enormous. Let's have a look at how these Argentinian socialists are coping with the triumph of Javier Milei.
Político, social y económico de la Argentina.
And Kosha, the Washington Post's unhinged coverage of Argentinian politics was a thing to behold. But let's have a look at The Guardian and how they've reported on this politician. Wow, they are not coping well. The far right, Milei, seizes narrow victory. Far right again there. He's apparently angering the Falklands veterans. They even are quoting Taylor Swift fans. I don't know what that has to do with anything. And fraud claims echo Trump ahead of... I mean, the Guardian is not going to cope with this, are they? I mean, they had the meltdown in Italy with Meloni. She was supposed to be some sort of a fascist. She's turned out to be possibly the most popular European leader at the moment. And they're having another moment.
The media is going to media, I think. And Taylor Swift was probably in there because it drives clicks, which is part of what they're after over here. But look, I think they've got the playbook. Even as he was running in the previous election before this runoff in July, those things came out. It's rinse and repeat. They're trying to frame him in a certain way. They framed him before the election. It'll continue. But again, 55-44. I think the people were buying into it. It is
emphatic. And finally, on Argentinian politics, despite Javier Milei, like Trump before him, being called far right and a fascist and likened to Hitler, he is, like Trump, very much pro-Israel. Here he is just a few days before the election waving the Israeli flag. And that is a bold move in these times before an election. So, yeah, we know where he stands on these issues. Now, Kosha, it seems there is a trend occurring across much of the West, from Finland and Sweden to Argentina, with the right winning elections. And next up, it could be the Netherlands. The Dutch election is on tomorrow, and centre-right candidate Pieter Omtzigt could become the country's next president. What do you think is going to happen in the Netherlands? They have had so much fallout from the attempts to revolutionise their farming. There has been such a backlash to that. Do you think that's going to be a factor?
For sure. I think the farmers become one of those flashpoints that everybody remembers, and they apply it when trying to make sense of the landscape over there. It's a very, very tight race, and I think we're just going to see that more and more, where all these countries in the West, after 50 years of peace and prosperity and just the sort of the leftward lurch that has happened there, you end up with these very divided electorates. And so in the case of the Argentines, it was decisive. But generally speaking, it looks like it'll be a tough call to make. And even if he were to win, or his opponent, you're then governing a country that's very, very divided. But I think that's just what it's going to take. Again, you've got these systemic generational crises, economically, culturally, and everything else. You're going to see more and more mavericks, as they say, or outsiders from the system trying to run and take back control for the people.
This is going to be fascinating. We're going to watch that race as well. And now moving to X. Elon Musk's social media platform X used to be called Twitter. I don't know why he changed the name to X, because every time we say X, we have to say formerly Twitter so people know what we're talking about. Elon, stop renaming things. It's not a strength. But X has faced a massive blow as major advertisers, including the likes of IBM and Apple, are departing the platform, pulling their advertising over claims that their ads have appeared alongside hateful content. Their departure has caused significant financial losses for Musk, and he's responded by suing the far-left outfit Media Matters in what he called a thermonuclear lawsuit. This is significant because it's clear that the campaign against X here, Kosha, is political. If they were really concerned about hate on social media platforms, they would be looking at TikTok. I mean, right now, letters to Osama is trending. Osama bin Laden's letter to America, and thousands of idiot kids are expressing solidarity with a mass murdering terrorist. We've got all sorts of hateful content and threats happening on Meta, on Facebook and Instagram, but it's X that is repeatedly targeted.
Because it is ground zero for what many say is the battle of the century. In the West, is battle for free speech. It's big, it's really messy. It's really tough in terms of the way the power structures, private and public, are aligning against this central tenet. And in a small way, the richest man in the world, who's a self-professed free speech absolutist, overpaid, many would say, for this platform from a business perspective, bought it to kind of make a dent in that battlefield. And so in that sense, if you zoom out, I guess it's not surprising that these kinds of attacks are going to come whenever they have a chance. He sort of stepped in it a little bit by retweeting something or
well, I don't think he did. I think he was responding to a discussion that is a legitimate discussion. It's one we've had with Jewish leaders here about so many who are members of the Jewish community who are active politically on the left, pushing policies that have led us to the position we're in now.
100%. It's a legitimate position.
It's a legitimate discussion to be having.
In the sense that it created an opening for the attack dogs to be let out, which was always going to happen. If not this, it would have been something else. It's a matter of time. And the other problem is the business model is beholden to ad revenue. For all of these social media companies, ad revenue is consolidated with a handful of companies that hold all the power, those big advertisers you cite. And I think he's trying to shift it to be more of a platform for the people, more subscription-driven, which could immunize him against these kinds of things. But it's going to get very dirty.
Absolutely. And I think that this is going to encourage many people who value free speech and value having at least one social media platform where there is an even playing field to subscribe. So if the corporates aren't going to back this, then people with small subscription fees perhaps will. Now, let's go to news closer to home. Let's look at this footage from, I think it's St Kilda Beach here in Melbourne, where the Jewish community was holding a peaceful protest that appears to have triggered this man. Let's have a look.
Because of Israel, because of the IDF, you've destroyed the world. You've destroyed the Middle East. It's not about Judaism. It's Zionism. Retards, you're all so stupid. Yeah, you.
Just ugly, hostile. I'm very sad that he was wearing a Hawthorn Football Club jumper there. It's not good for us. But this was about the most peaceful protest you can have. These people were pushing prams, empty prams, to represent the young children, some babies that have been kidnapped and are still being held hostage in Gaza. And then to cop that, it's just... I mean, what can you do? There's this anti-Israel, anti-Semitic... hostility in the community is undeniable right now.
It is, and I think it surprised a lot of people, the scale with which it is and the moments and pockets in which it bubbles up. They're also very thin-skinned, like he just seemed really irritated by the whole thing and, you know, profanities and all of that. And I just don't see an end in sight. I don't know what the...
Destroyed the Middle East. I mean, they're a tiny, tiny country, the only real democracy in the Middle East, the only place where women have equal rights, and this is the unhinged reaction it gets. I'm talking about unhinged reactions.